The Mennonites tell a story about an evangelist who came knocking on a man's door and asked him, "Are you saved? Are you a Christian?" And the man responded humbly, "Ask my neighbors." What do our neighbors say about us? Can they tell that we are Christians by the way that we live? It's not enough to know the gospel or even to preach the gospel if we don't embody the gospel, this good news that Jesus is making all things new, that through Jesus we can be reconciled to God and to each other. This gospel must be visible. It must be tangible. It must be experienced and then incarnated. Teresa of Avila put it so beautifully when she said, "Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours." Paul writes that it is Christ in us that is the hope of glory. I grew up in a non-religious family in Canada, and I can remember strangers handing me Christian pamphlets in the mall, strangers knocking on our door during dinner time, strangers walking me through a scripted gospel presentation. Now, I wasn't led to Christ this way. And I've never led anyone else to Christ this way. I'm not saying you can't, it just hasn't ever worked for me. And I was thinking about why, and it dawned on me that you can do all of these things without actually being a Christian in any meaningful sense. You can hand out a pamphlet, knock on someone's door, or give a gospel presentation without having an authentic relationship with Jesus. You can you can talk the talk without walking the walk. Now, often we assume that when people don't respond to our efforts to share our faith, they don't believe our message, when in fact, they don't believe us. It's not that people aren't open to Jesus, they're just not sure if we can be trusted. They don't see us as credible witnesses. We have to embody the good news that Jesus is Lord, that His kingdom is near, and that He's making all things new. In 2007, a major Barna research study explored what the American public thinks about Christians, and they gave people a list of adjectives to choose from. The top 5 responses were, number 1, anti-homosexual, 91%, judgmental, 87%, hypocritical, 85%, old-fashioned, 78%, too involved in politics, 75%. The most common adjective they chose to describe Christians was anti-homosexual. This is what we're known for. It's tragic because Jesus says that the first word that should come to mind when people hear the word Christian is love. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And that was 14 years ago that this study was done. How much has our reputation changed since then? We can't help people know, love, and follow Jesus if they don't trust us. So how do we become credible witnesses? Well, we can start by looking to the example of the early church. The first believers weren't perfect, but very early on, the book of Acts records that the first Christians met together every day in the temple courts and in each other's homes. They ate together, they prayed together, and devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. They sold property and possessions, and they gave freely to anyone who had need, and they were happy. And the Bible records that they enjoyed the favor of all the people. They had a good reputation in their community. They were welcomed by their neighbors. They stood out for their integrity and generosity, hospitality, compassion, the way they handled adversity. But pastor and theologian Tim Keller says that it was the quality of their community that really got people's attention. And he notes that the early church displayed several unique characteristics. First, it was multi-ethnic. Christianity was the first multi-ethnic religion. Before that, nobody chose their religion. Gods came from your family traditions or the surrounding culture or your town or region. But from the very beginning, any racial group was welcome to follow Jesus and become part of his local and broader community. Secondly, the early church stood out for its commitment to the poor and the marginalized. The early church stood out for its non-retaliatory attitude. They took Jesus at his word when he said, "Turn the other cheek." The early church also stood out for being pro-life. Now, it's important that they did not equate being pro-life with being anti-abortion. Abortion was dangerous if it existed at all. So pregnant women usually would carry their baby to term. And if they didn't want the baby, they would take that infant, usually girls, and discard them at the garbage dump. And Christians went to these dumps and picked up these discarded kids, brought them home, nursed them to life, and adopted them into their own families. That's what it meant to be pro-life. Imagine if this is what it meant for us today. How would outsiders view the church? And then lastly, the early church was committed to sexual purity. Sex was confined to committed, lifelong relationships. Now, Reverend Tim Isbell, a pastor with us here in NorCal, observed, he said, "We think of the first two as liberal characteristics and the last two as conservative, and the middle one really looks like neither. So an authentic Christian community does not look like an extension of any political party. We are citizens of a different kingdom with its own unique culture and values and practices." A lot of our evangelism training focuses on what to say instead of how to live. We change the style of our speech without changing the substance of our communities. One of my atheist friends once said to me, "Do you know why people don't go to church? Because they've been to church." And yet the early church lived in such a way that they enjoyed the favor of all the people. It was something attractive about their faith and their way of life. And as a result, God added to their number daily those who were being saved. So the real secret of fruitful and effective mission in the world is the quality of our community. We dare not speak of sharing the gospel unless we have done the hard internal work that is required for us to embody the gospel. Whatever God does through us, God must first do in us, which is just another way of saying that we need to be a holy people. A holiness for us as Nazarenes is most clearly understood as Christ-likeness. We love as Jesus would love. We do what Jesus would do. This is how we become credible witnesses. My wife, Christine, and I pastored a multicultural church just outside Los Angeles, Trinity Church of the Nazarene. And we learned through one of our ministry partners that our county was a major origin, transit, and destination site for human trafficking. So we asked them to come and train our church to identify people who may have been trafficked in our community. We felt that the more eyes that we had out there, the better. Now, at the time, I served as a volunteer chaplain with our local police department, and I let the chief know about this training. And so he sent one of his detectives to participate. Well, the detective was so impressed, he went back and he told the chief, "We should bring this training to the entire department." And so within a month, we had trained all 80 officers. And one of them looked troubled afterward and said to me, "I wish I had received this training earlier. It might have changed the way that I conducted some of my investigations." And another looked puzzled and said, "Why in the world is a church involved in anti-human trafficking work?" To her, there was no logical connection between the faith community in the real world problems like the ones she dealt with every day. And I was devastated to learn that she thought this way. But then I was so encouraged when she went on to say, wow, what a great thing that you are doing. This is wonderful. I wish all churches were like this. And over the next 6 months, I had more spiritual conversations with our officers and city council members and other community leaders than ever before. When we care about the least of these, when the church makes earth look just a little bit more like heaven, doors open, hearts open. When we create bridges of love and goodwill, we earn the trust of our neighbors and gain favor in our community. We become credible witnesses.